Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10, 9, 8, and I'm breaking away. I'm all dressed up and I'm ready to play. 7, 6, 5, 4, and I'm all over you.
Most graciously by Icon Winterfest to show off some of my skills and give you guys an idea on some of the materials I use to create costume armor. So let's get to it. JR, if you want to hit the button. Boop. Hit it again.
Wow.
And again.
Wow.
Because I went all fancy with this PowerPoint. One more time.
Wow.
Okay. So today we're going to cover what is Sintra. We're going to go down with the tools of the trade, a little bit of safety. Trust me, safety on this stuff is a must. Anybody who knows me knows that safety has got to be a must with this stuff. We're going to get into a little bit of design. Basically, what it is that you're going to want to watch for when you start to create armor. Then we're going to get into actual fabrication. I've got some samples up here, but I've also got some patterns and some spare citrons so I can actually show you what it is that I do in order to get the shapes that you need to go towards the body. And we'll spend a little bit of time on finishing. I also have some tickets that we're going to hand out for everybody who's here because I do have a pair of small little bracers that I made up the other night to give away. So stick around for the end. JR? So first of all, what is Sintra? It's actually a brand name. It's not a kind of plastic or anything like that. The brand name that they sell it under actually has a couple of different names, but the most common is Sintra. Lightweight, rigid board, moderately expanded, closed cell polyvinyl chloride, which is PVC, and if you think I was going to remember that today, forget it, because it's easy to read. It does come in a bunch of different colors, a bunch of different thicknesses. It is available now at Artist Emporium, right, Joe?
Yep.
And you guys have it in different sizes and stuff?
Yeah.
What's your biggest size, do you know offhand?
4 foot by 8 foot?
Yeah,
Yes, 4 foot by 8 foot, and then we cut it down.
Awesome.
We've got like
So
2
there you
foot,
go.
2 by 2.
Because I didn't include pricing, what's the pricing on your 4x8s?
99?
You didn't think this
Come
was
on,
gonna
you
be
told me this
tested.
this morning.
Come on, we just walked in.
99.
I don't know.
Somewhere there.
You're the purchaser.
It's $10 for a 2 foot by 2 foot square.
Yeah, okay, cool. So depending on what it is that you're gonna make, head on down to Artist Emporium, get it there. You can go, there are some places that specialize this type of stuff in the city. Sabic Polymers is usually where I go to get my stuff. But now that Artist Emporium sells it, it's actually a lot easier to go down to there than say industrial warehouses because they have some very bizarre banker hours. They're not open on the weekend, which, you know, because everybody works, right? So you can't get down there to buy the stuff. The different sizes that you can get it in, I think, I don't know for sure if you guys are selling like the really thin stuff. I think
We
you just
sell
might
3 mil.
3 mil?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You can get it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mil, and even the thickest, which is 13. I've never used 13. The biggest, the thickest I've ever gone is 1/4 inch, which is 6 millimeter. Nice to work with, easy to fix mistakes, but it does tend to retain the heat a lot longer. We'll get into some of that a little bit later. Sintra, the plastic, is also used in point-of-purchase displays, exhibits, kiosk, framing, cold mounting. You can actually print on this stuff for direct digital, which is kind of cool. Screen printing and, well, hey, caution me, go figure. Sure. Some of the tools of the trade. Hit the button again. Sintra itself, obviously, you can see some of the colors there. I primarily use black and white because the paint jobs that I do on top, the Sintra color will actually change the color of the paint ever so slightly. If you were to use, say, green Sintra and you want red on top of that, your red here is going to come out just a little bit muddy. You have to do a lot of coats. Now, because I am super frugal, which isn't just a nice word for being cheap, I'm going to go with white or black just so that I can not have to worry about extra coats buying a whack load of paint. Heat gun. Okay, these things are essential. You can throw this stuff into an oven But for those who live at home or have significant others who like to cook turkeys and whatnot, probably not a great idea. Sintra does have slight scent to it when it's heated up, especially in an oven. That scent can linger on and get into food and stuff like that. You can throw it into boiling water to heat it up and get it to shape. But for our purposes, a heat gun with all the little attachments, you can actually get a kit, usually at Canadian Tire, Walmart, for about 30, 40 bucks, give or take. If you can get the ones with the kit where you have a lot of the little attachments that come with it, this actually helps you direct the heat into certain areas rather than just having a blast of hot air coming out of the chair. X-Acto knives. Hit the button again, Julie. I usually use two different X-Acto knives. This one, the box cutters, I'll use for actually cutting out the initial shapes. This I will use, and I do use all of these extra blades that come with it for engraving. Now, depending on your design and what it is that you're doing, that type of stuff usually comes into play, say at the end when you're doing your final, when you're starting into doing your finishing, whether it's carving, or even getting rid of some little burrs and stuff like that. You don't necessarily want to use a huge box cutter. You don't get a lot of the finesse, a lot of the nice smooth action that you can get with it. Mouse sander, very important. Sintra has edges, very sharp edges, I might add. Blunting them off a little bit, especially in corners, just so that when you're wearing it, it's not stabbing into you. Always a good idea. Body filler, auto body filler. Brand name Bondo. We use a lot of that type of stuff. Simply because when you are working with Sintra, if you've got corners or something along those lines, or if there's little gaps that you need to fill, Bondo takes to Sintra like a duck to water. I cannot recommend getting that stuff enough. It sands great. There are different kinds of body filler that you can get.
What have you done?
I broke it.
Broke the matrix.
I broke the matrix. Is there a little blue light on there, Junior? Can you see?
It's flashing blue.
Okay, all right.
Right now it's on.
Okay, so anyways, Bondo, you can get different types of Bondo. The stuff in the red and black can, that's your typical brand C. I use it a lot, it's not bad to work with. I have been working with Bondo Gold a little bit more though, which sands like a dream. With regular Bondo, regular auto body, you might want to use a little bit of spot putty depending on whether or not you have air holes or bubbles or anything like that that come through when you're sanding down. But the gold Bondo, if you guys have the money in your budget for it, get it. I highly recommend it.
Oh, you want me to turn it back on?
You know, it might help. And as soon as my projector turns back on, we'll...
I thought you turned it off on purpose.
Everything's on purpose.
Some people have asked me about using short hair and strand fiberglass that you can get as well with, that's already sort of mixed in with Bondo. It's not bad, but it's not great. Again, it depends on what your design is and how it is that you want to finish. Okay, Junior, let's carry on. Sandpaper. You're going to use a lot of this, even if it's just to buff the surface a little bit, to take the primer and the paint better, doing your corners, doing your edges, Bondo, the whole 9 yards. We usually go with an 80 grit to start and work up to 120. Anything beyond 120 is overkill, but again, depending on your fanaticism of your armor, go ahead, it's all good. And paint. Some people will use primer. You can use primer on Sintra. You don't necessarily have to. Any kind of Krylon plastic paint works great with this stuff. For those who may be doing a little bit more in the way of Bondo work and literally doing sculpting with the Sintra, you might find that doing primer on top helps out smoothing out your edges and whatnot a little bit. So, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I started using primer about 6 months ago. working on a particular project that so far seems to be turning out quite well with Bondo and primers. So if you need it, I'd say go for it. Here. Okay, safety. There's a lot of stories that circulate out there about me and safety and how we don't get along. But, you know, seeing as how I'm going to be getting hitched in that later on this year, it might be a good idea to start looking after myself. Woo! Dust mask. Okay, a dust mask is a simple, like, you know, those white masks that you can get, any, like Walmart and stuff like that, have a little elastic band. That's a dust mask. There's differences between a dust mask and a respirator. A respirator is more of a filtration system. If you're painting in closed areas, or if you're using Bondo or fiberglass and resin, having a respirator is not a bad idea. Working in a ventilated area is extremely important. Actually, here's a good example right here. This is what a respirator technically looks like. You can get these in different sizes. You can get them in different filter sizes and stuff. I've seen them where the things come out to like here, and there's this huge round, you know, filter type thing. Great for doing the work, but it's good for cautioning too, depending on what you want to do. A dust, like I said, a dust mask is just something that helps keep, say, Bondo dust out of your face when you're doing sanding. But always definitely working in an open air area. Now, I know a lot of people don't have their own building or shop or anything like that. Some people have to work in their basements or doing whatever. Having a fan in there goes a long way. If you can actually suck fumes out through a basement window or something like that. I've done that myself, where I've had a typical GE fan right in front of the window where the window's open, and I actually have the fan pointing out so that it can actually suck all that stuff out. Safety goggles. Yeah, safety goggles are a good idea, especially if you're working with compressed air. Bill, don't laugh. Safety goggles come in many different sizes, again, and shapes. These ones here, they're fine. They're perfect. You can get the big bulky ones if you want. These ones are like $2 at the dollar store, which is surprisingly where I get a lot of my stuff. Next. Latex and work gloves. Latex gloves you're going to want to use when you're working with Bondo, if you're smoothing it out by hand, or just so you can keep your hands clean. Work gloves, kind of a must when you're working with Sintra and heat guns, simply due to the fact that you're working with heat. This stuff heats up. If you're shaping things by hand like I do, you want a fairly thin pair of work gloves so that you can actually get in there, do the work that you need to do, and not scald yourself. Ventilation, I've already talked about this. Fans, an open area, outside if you have to. Next. What's common sense? I'm pretty sure we're all got common sense here, right? You're not going to want to operate certain tools without knowing how to work them. You're not going to want to work on a bandsaw and look away and off comes the thumb, or, depending. If something does not feel right to you, safety-wise, don't do it. Common sense. Next. Yes, reading instructions. I've gotten lots of flack on this from Rachel over the years about not reading instructions on certain tools. So I've learned how to do that.
The compressed air can is a perfect example, but
Exactly.
I
Bandsaws, band sanders especially. Those are kind of fun when you're not watching what you're doing and you can feel that. Yeah, let's not get into that. Next. All right, design. This is where it gets fun. Depending on what it is that you're wanting to wear, whether it's from a movie, anime, cartoon, whatever, you're going to be set with certain limitations. And that's simply due to the fact that physics in media do not always translate as good to when you're actually wearing this stuff. The one example I can think of off the top of my head, anything transformers, say generation 1, if you're trying to build it on a Sintra, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. How is it going to fit on the body? How am I going to move in it? How am I going to sit in it? And if anybody's making armor, forget it. You're not sitting. You're going to be standing a lot.
Hey, I'm sitting.
James, can you sit? No.
I'll be sitting or standing for about 4 hours.
There you go. Even in my
Stormtroopers aren't
head-
supposed to sit.
Well, see, that's the thing, because you're wearing armor. It's all proud.
It was cloned out of them.
You're in the world, you're wanting to show it all off. And I can't blame anybody for wanting to show off a good set of armor, seriously. But the design phase is basically where everything gets started. And it all gets started on a piece of paper. Whether it's an original design, and for most of what I'm going to talk here, I'm going to be using the idea of original design because everybody has their own ideas on how they can go about making something. For example, Tom in the front here has brought in his Sith armor to show off. This is his original design, but Tom, I'll bet you when you were starting to design this thing, it all started on paper, right? Yep. Yep, so there you go. Tom's design here is pretty intricate. Do you want to talk about this? Because you know more about it than I do. No?
Not much to tell.
All right, that's all good. It's based off a typical Sith design. Now, anybody who knows Star Wars will know that there are certain things that you have to follow. Costuming rules, as it were. And his setup here is actually kind of nice. It's very curved, it's very elegant. He's actually even gone and built a whole spine out of pieces that are all segmented. So basically you get the motion. Tom, can this be passed around? Yeah? Go for it. You guys want to see this?
Yeah.
This is nice. This is good stuff. So if you can pass that around, you'll get a good idea of how nicely this stuff shapes. Like there's not really much in the way of sharp angles or anything like that. I mean, you can get sharp angles if that's what you need, but it does curve like that, like really nicely. We've used this stuff for helmets, armor pieces, shape pieces, muscular pieces, you name it, you can probably get away with it. There's other plastics on the market that you can get which may be easier to use, but again, if you're working on something with a budget, like say if you're working in Winterfest or Warbler, both which are great by the way, you have to double or even triple up on it to get the thickness that you might want, which again is going to cut into your budget. So I technically use, right now for the armor works that I'm using, I'm mostly working in Sintra, but I'm starting to branch out into the Winterfest now to do detail work, which we can get into as well with the finishing. Warbler is still not available in Canada. You have to special order that now, right? Still?
You have to order it from
Cosplay
cosplay
supplies.
supplies from
Cosplay
Yaya.
supplies? And that's like $80 a sheet or something like that?
When I ordered it from Yaya, I was shipping, I think it was 70 something.
70 something? Yeah. So
For
I
a
mean,
jumbo sheet. for like a big
for as good as Warbler is, it does heat up and shape really nicely. A lot of the techniques that I'll kind of show you guys here can be easily translated and used in working with Winterfest, working with Warbler, even working with foam. Foam is another big thing that's come across in the last couple of years for building armor. If it's coated and edged nicely, it looks really sweet. I'll admit that. I haven't worked in foam myself because I just happen to love my plastic so much that I've never bothered, but I have seen some N7 suits out there that are spectacularly done in foam that you can buy at Walmart, the yoga mats and machinist foam they call it, I think. It's like something you lay out and you can lay on it while you're working on your car or something like that. Really nice stuff. So, design is going to be very much based on your own interpretations on what you're seeing. But like I said, it all starts on paper. And one more time. The way that I go about starting costume armor is obviously with an idea in the head. From there, it goes on to paper. But in order for me to get an idea what my final is going to look like, I work with what I call a turnaround. Now, turnarounds you can actually download off the web anywhere. There's tons of them all over. But basically what a turnaround is a female or male body that has 3 angles, front, back, and side. This is a typical design of a turnaround that I will work on. So using this as a template, now obviously I'm not as buff as this guy, maybe, you never know. But what I will do is take this particular turnaround and literally draw my design over top so that I have an idea of how it's going to fit on me, but I can also judge where my cuts are going to be, where the folds are going to go, how is it going to sit on the body, and where certain gaps need to go in order to allow me to move in this stuff. Yeah. So now that I've bored you with that, why don't we actually get to work? Let's see what it is that we can do. I have brought with me some examples and some samples of pieces along with patterns that we've done over the last little while. Just give me 1 second here to get all my tools set up.
Don't blow a fuse like last time.
You know what? That's the one thing I'm going to be worried about. Okay, that looks pretty good. So, heat gun. I'm amazed this thing hasn't blown out by now for the amount of times that I've actually used it.
You should probably tell them not to use 2 at once.
It's the convention center. I think it should be good. Okay, good.
Safety.
Safety, exactly. Where's my goggles?
Goggles.
The goggles, they do nothing.
Right there, hand in front of heat gun, bad idea.
Oh, there, very good. Just move some of this stuff out of the way here.
It's alive.
Okay. X-Acto knives, razors, patterns, a little bit of tape, and we're good to go. And if Rachel's done showing that piece of Sintra around, I can take that back. Because I'm going to need it. What's that?
Oh, that. Okay. The light is right over there by the gun.
But my rifle, Dallas.
Pattern. So as I said, this is where it all starts. Now, if you have access to a computer and you have graphic software like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, this part is much easier if you have those things. If you don't, you're really doing it old school. When I first started out doing this, I didn't have Illustrator. I had Photoshop, but no Illustrator. And basically it was taking my own measurements and literally doing pattern after pattern after pattern, trying it on, making sure that it fit, but that's a process where you're doing it over and over and over again in order to make it work. By the time I got Illustrator, it was a lot easier because I could literally draw this in a small size, take the measurement, and then expand it because it's vectorized, so it's a lot easier. Getting all these little squiggles and stuff, because I already had in my mind what I wanted it to look like, it was easy enough to draw it out in Illustrator, print it, cut it out, and now I've got a pattern. Rach, are you done with that piece? Can I back it back now?
Okay.
Did you? Oh, there it is. There, I got it.
Oh, that piece.
Yeah.
I thought you meant this piece.
No, it's all good. Sorry. How can you tell we're totally informal here? So here we have my piece of Sintra. Now obviously I'm not going to use this entire chunk simply due to the fact that, well, you know, you want to save up on your costs. So when I'm plotting it out and planning it out, I will actually utilize a lot of the edges, just like so. I don't know if everybody can see that. But by utilizing the edges, you can actually save a lot on your material just by placing this thing in a certain, back and forth, mirrored it and stuff like that, in order to be able to use as much material as you can, but also saving a lot. So I'm going to cut this piece in half, just so that you guys can get an idea of how much of the material we'll actually use. Cutting Sintra is no more difficult than cutting cardboard. If you want a nice, clean edge, what you want to do is simply do what we call a scoring, which is basically going over the same line 2 or 3 times, and each time you're applying just a little more pressure. Just like so. The pattern itself just gets traced out. Okay. Usually in my shop I'll have music blasting, so don't mind me if I just sort of zone out for a second. Yeah, where's my waiting music? Yep, Jeopardy. And never, I shouldn't say never, but even little pieces like this will come in handy one day. If it's just for using for finishing or for shimming or something along those lines. And because the cost of the actual plastic's definitely worth keeping, I usually keep a little box by my work table for any little flash pieces like this, just to toss in, because like I said, I tend to use them a lot more than I should probably, but good to have it on hand just in case.
Dallas, are you going to tell them about cutting into thicker pieces?
Yeah, we'll get into the thicker stuff in a minute. Usually with the thicker stuff though, if I'm doing armor in say 1/4 inch, which is literally twice the thickness of what I'm using here, in order to cut that particular piece out, actually I got the sample right here. this type of thicker stuff, I'll actually use a Dremel tool. Dremel tools are sort of an advanced technique. A lot of people are kind of wary about them because literally you've got a small rotary tool with a diamond-edged cutter on it. Moving that stuff around type of thing where your fingers are really close, a lot of people are kind of wary about that type of thing. But if you're wearing gloves, it shouldn't be a problem, right? But for thicker stuff, definitely Dremel tool helps a lot. I wouldn't recommend using like a little knife like this or a box cutter. Simply because you literally be spending most of your time going over and over and over and over. Use a Dremel tool, it's easier. If you have a little bandsaw, again, these are tools that will build up over, you know, if you're really into this, you'll wind up buying a lot of tools that help you out a hell of a lot more than a little X-Acto knife. But a bandsaw, definitely. I've got one of those at home. Little $50 job from Canadian Tire, I think it was on sale. Works great. The blades that come with it go through this stuff like a hot knife through butter. And you can see we're wearing safety goggles. You guys thought I was going to forget about that, didn't you? As soon as I get this piece cut out, Rach, do you have a pen by chance?
No.
You don't have a pen?
I don't have a pen.
Quick, pen! Oh, no worries.
Someone throw a pen at him, he's got safety goggles.
It's true. I can handle it.
But he doesn't have gloves on. Yeah, where's your gloves?
Gloves, when it comes to this part, I don't usually wear. Now that doesn't mean that you guys can get away with it.
It's an extra layer.
It just means that because I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing, it's like a Bob Ross painting.
He knows he can get away with 2 less fingers.
And there's a little tree in the corner?
What's that?
Happy little cloud.
So I can see
Tell anyone.
Yeah, I could tell. I guess I did.
Cut you.
Yes, for an example of do without saying
We're almost
something.
ready. Okay. I think I might have changed. Hey, I hear somebody had a pen.
He has safety goggles, just throw.
As long as you don't mind me using it, just make the trash out a little bit. There you go, that's good. I just need to be able to trace that out a little bit better. So I know what I'm cutting.
You got it?
I have. And some pattern pieces are easier to cut than others, obviously. Oh, not so much trouble as it's just being stubborn and doesn't want to let go. I can already hear people going, I'm not working with this stuff, it looks too much trouble.
That's just because he's going slow.
That's
Yeah, it's scroll song right now.
aha, there we go. Hey, done. So, as you can see, perfect duplicate of the paper pattern, which we can put to the side because we won't need to use it. Now, in your design phase, where you have on paper what it is that you want it to look like, depending on how you're going to finish this thing, and by finishing I mean the detail work, the painting, adding grime and dirt, or unless you want your armor squeaky clean like James' Stormtrooper armor, which we need to dirty up because you look just too white.
It's his first day.
It's just,
That's because they never survive a battle.
ooh, there's a shot.
I need to
So-
call it first.
How is it that we can take this pattern and put it onto here without having to, redraw it by hand? Any ideas?
Carbon paper.
What? Somebody said-
Carbon paper.
Carbon paper, exactly. Carbon paper, you can get carbon paper in black or white. Now, obviously, if I'm working in black Sintra, black carbon paper isn't going to do the job when I'm doing all the little squiggles and getting all that design into there. But carbon paper is the way to go. Yeah, I've already used carbon paper multiple times, even on this particular pattern, just to get it right. And it works great. It doesn't brush off or smear as one might think it would. But if you're doing something intricate like this type of thing, where you have multiple swirls and squiggles and stuff like that, you probably would be an idea to transfer that onto your piece so that when your folding is all done, you can do your finishing. Now, squiggles and stuff like this, most times if I have something that's this fancy, I'm going to want a raised surface. So I'm going to use something like, puffy paint, which is fairly cheap, works extremely well, sticks to this stuff great. Or, as we've done before, engraving. Using a simple little dollar store engraver like this, or by going to, say, like Home Depot and picking up some engraving bits for a Dremel tool as well, works very well. The engraving can be done before you do your folding, even after. I recommend now after. When I first did an engraved piece on this type of stuff, I did the engraving first, did my heat shaping and folding after the fact, and found that the engraved parts, the little squiggles and all the nice fine detail, actually distorted ever so slightly. And I had to go back over it. It's basically doubled my work, essentially. So after the fact, after doing my folding and heat shaping, then doing my engraving, much better. The result was like 10 times better. So I'm not going to do and waste your time with showing you how to trace. Everybody knows how to trace, it's not that hard. But essentially, little graph paper, a little carbon paper on the back, cut to the same size, just tape it together, pencil or a pen, go over your design, trace it on, transfer it on, and you're good to go. But now we get to the good stuff. Shaping. 1/8 of an inch Sintra. Heats up extremely well and extremely fast. Unlike the 1/4 of an inch, which actually retains heat on the inside when you heat it up, so there's going to be a cool down time for that. This stuff is almost instant. Well, I don't want to say almost instant, but at least 10 to 15 seconds from fold to cold so that the shape stays the same. When it comes to shaping, and because I need to have these two ends come around, you can't just bend it like that. You could, but it's going to snap. That's where the heat gun comes into place. So, by using a rolling pin, believe it or not, a rolling pin makes an excellent curve, makes it perfectly round, but like a blacksmith, if anybody's ever seen a blacksmith working, you know how they pound the metal into stumps that actually have holes cut into them. That's a process that they call dishing. It's not so much different here when working with plastic and Sintra, Winterfest, Winterfest, the whole 9 yards. If you have something pre-existing that you can work into, like a bowl or a mold, by all means, use it. That's the beautiful part about working with this stuff, is that there's never really one proper way to do it. There's so many different techniques, and I can only show you what I know here, but I highly recommend that if anybody wants to get into this and they want to start getting into doing complex shapes like this, where you start getting into doing muscle structures and stuff like that, experiment. Use the back end of a screwdriver. Use your knuckle, literally, and force your way in there. when you're doing stuff like this, it's almost like you have to have, I shouldn't say you have to have, but you're sculpting essentially from a flat piece and making something more three-dimensional with compound curves. So when it comes to this little piece, because it's fairly simple, this particular piece is actually a cuff of a larger piece, a gauntlet that actually would go with something like this. As a matter of fact, this particular design is just a smaller version of this. I had to expand this so that it would fit me properly. Whoever came up with this pattern originally, and there are patterns that you can download off the net for free. The Armor Archive is a great place to go, by all means. Even if you do a Google search for armor patterns, you're going to come up with tons of different ones. A lot of the stuff that seems to be kind of popular right now is the 18th century Gothic, which is really nice. I've never tried to do a replica suit of that yet, just because I think it might be beyond my own skill set. But then again, I don't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to it anymore. Pieces like this, elbow cups, again, you can find these patterns online, no problem. This particular one is 17th century France, I think they called it, it was perfect for what I needed. Modified it only slightly. A lot of the extra decor, again with the finishing, and we'll get into that a little bit later, goes a long way to adding to what it is that you've made. Let's get to shaping this thing. Let's see what we can do.
Well,
So, 2 settings on the heat gun, low and high.
Put your safety goggles on.
And the gloves.
Oh, and gloves. You should use gloves.
Actually, gloves I will need. Can you get them from my jacket?
Where's your jacket?
My jacket's sitting right there. They're in the box. For now, I will heat this up. So, just a simple motion, back and forth. When you're doing your shaping, ideally, and this is what I've sort of discovered, is rather than trying to shape the whole thing at one time, go half. Not only will you be able to control the plastic better, but you can also pay more attention to what it is that you're doing. If you're only doing half a piece at a half a pattern at a time. Yep, it's okay. And I will put on my handy-dandy gloves so that I'm not scalding my hands and screaming out in pain and uttering obscenities. Now you can already see, if you can already see how the heat is affecting this thing, warping it quite nicely out of shape. It's very, very fast. 1/4 inch Sintra, I'd still be doing this just to be able to get a little bit of a fold out of it. Now, when it comes to shaping, a nice round object, it doesn't even matter what it is. It could be a rolling pin. I've shaped this stuff using old cans of spray paint. I'm not kidding. I've got so much junk in my shop just to grab and pull from. It's unreal.
Unsafe.
Actually, it is kind of safe because it's completely empty. There's actually no compressed air in it at all. I punch a little hole into it, let it go get out. But when you compare the cost of an old can of spray paint to like a $2 wooden rolling pin, yeah, I think I'd go with the rolling pin. So, Grant, given that, using the rolling pin makes for a very nice curve. Now, you're going to wind up, nobody ever gets their shapes done right the first time out. It's literally impossible because you don't know where these things are going to meet up as you're doing your folding and rolling. That's why attacking it from one half to the other tends to help a little bit. You can actually, once you start folding your second half, you can see how the pieces are going to come together. You can see where the edges are going to meet, and then you can actually get into a lot of the fine tuning. Much like a blacksmith, they're pounding, they're repounding, they're heating, pounding, heating, pounding, back and forth. It's no different with this. heat it up so it's nice and malleable. Getting all bent out of shape, angry at me. And then just by using the shape of the rolling pin or whatever it is that you have on hand, whatever it is that you're using the shape with, just follow that curve.
Going back to common sense, don't ever use a body part to shape the Sintra. Ever.
We have to get into that.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind it?
Yes, there are stories behind that. There's many stories behind that.
JR was there for that one.
Yes, he was.
Is that the sweater story?
Yeah.
He needed a spine on one of his costumes just to go inward. Put it against my back and just push in.
And that was using 1/4 inch Sintra, which still retained a lot of heat. Now, granted, the basement was a little cool at the time. It wasn't so bad, but it probably could have been a lot worse. But as JR here was literally taking a piece of Sintra that was cut out in a pattern and literally going and using a gloved hand and running up and down my spine, like with the plastic up against the spine so I could get that nice indentation there. Yeah, it was a little work.
Maybe if you had some leather cloth.
Yeah, I didn't have leather cloth at the time. But that's not a bad idea. Leather does soak a lot of the heat up. That's why blacksmiths use them as aprons.
That is one thing to consider. The shorter time it takes to heat up, the shorter time it's going to take to cool, the longer it takes to heat up, and the longer it's going to take to cool.
You should probably mention to them what happens if you keep heating up the same spot too long.
Oh, yeah. If you end up heating a piece of Sintra over and over and over again, just that one spot very contained, and you don't move your heat gun around to let the area soak it up, you're going to get a bubbling effect.
Yep, you will. When we were first experimenting with this, like a lot of this stuff came about because we were getting into different types of material to use for armor for live action role playing. Anybody here who knows me, I'm also part of Havoc, which is very costume heavy when it comes to getting, putting armor together and stuff like that. We wanted to have something that was not as expensive as fiberglass, but still looked good and was able to work with. And just so happened that we happened to fool around with a little bit of ABS sheet, and it worked out. It's like, wow, this stuff is actually pretty strong and pretty durable. How does it take a hit? So when we knew that the locker weapons and things that we were using wasn't going to damage it, it was like, okay, production time. Let's see what this stuff can do. So here we have it. We're starting to get close to the edges now. We're starting to be able to fold this thing up quite nicely. Again, like I said, you're going to be going over and over a few times to get the shape that it is that you want. With this particular pattern, because I'm so used to it, I can get it down to maybe 4 or 5 reheats in shape before it's exactly where I want it to be. I'm going to see if I can break that record today. Maybe we can get it down to 4, maybe 3. And rolling. At this point, I can actually touch the stuff bare with just straight gloved hands, just to get it where I need it to be. Hold it there for a little while it cools down and holds its shape. Usually when people are doing this, if they're using boiling water, they'll keep a little bit of cold water right beside them. So very much like a blacksmith, from hot to cold immediately, and it sets right off the hot.
So you can't flash cool it without it cracking on you?
You can flash cool it and it doesn't crack, yeah. Seriously, it's actually kind of nice. When it was, remember when it was 40 below out all last month? Last month? The month before? Taking a couple of pieces like this, I could literally just go outside of my shop, dump it in snow, and bring it back in with nothing. Actually, I probably could have just held it out to the wind and it would have cooled out quite nicely. How many is that? 3? That was 4. Now the nice thing about certain patterns is that they can be used for other things. This particular pattern, while it is off of a cuff, and was meant to be for a cuff. This particular pattern, blown up to, say, neck size, makes a really nice gorget too.
Or a crown.
Or, yeah, exactly. There's lots of things you can, like, the nice thing that I'm finding about the patterns that I'm either drawing out or getting from online is that, yeah, I can use them for anything. An elbow cut pattern, while it fits here very nicely, if you blow it up, make it bigger, it's great for the knees too. And shoulder, yeah, exactly. Shoulders as well. You could go shoulders there too. It also helps to keep your design somewhat, it keeps your design in line. Like certain cartoons and movies and stuff like that, the one thing that comes to mind is Jack the Giant Killer. When, what's his name? Ben Kenobi, when it came out onto scene and he had that leather mixed with plate, like the contours of that armor just didn't sit well with me. I didn't like it. And I think that might be just because of the fact that they used so many different shapes and so many different material, and it didn't quite match. We're almost good with this, so I'm just going to take these edges and round them out a little bit, and we will have a cufflink that's pretty much ready to go. And I can't stress experimentation enough. A lot of these techniques and stuff that I'm showing you here, I've tried and tested and found them very, very much in the way of a great, they work really, really well. Okay. So here we have it. We're almost at the edge. But how is it that we can close these things up and make it perfectly round? Painter tape. I'm going to literally take these two pieces, match them up from side to side, use painter tape to put them together, like so, and put on my gloves. And what I'm going to do now is, because everything else is very nice, has a very nice round shape to it, looks great, I'm going to concentrate mostly on the area that it needs to be. This is your fine tuning. Right in this area here, we're just going to heat it up. And again, working on the idea of half at a time, I'm working literally on the bottom half. Then again, taking this and just smoothing it all out to where it should be. This particular technique can be used again, like I said, with Wonderflex. It can be used with Borblet, you get it. Styrene's a little bit of a different creature because it's so thin and it heats up so fast. I tend to use that mostly just for detail work or vacuum forming. And the edges, it really does. So, with that being said, there it is. Ready to rock and roll. So now you have a perfectly shaped, rounded piece. You can glue this together with Crazy Glue. I recommend Crazy Glue for Sintra simply based on the fact that it literally melts the pieces together. It's an awesome, the chemical name is whatever, it doesn't matter. But using the liquid Crazy Glue as opposed to the gel, liquid, gel, and epoxy, that's my top three. Very rarely I'll actually use an epoxy for this type of stuff. It's always crazy glue. It holds it really well. Once you've got it crazy glued together, you can take and seal up the edge by using Bondo, or you can just cut another strip of Sintra, put it over top, sand it down a little bit so it's not so bulky, glue it all together. It all depends on what your design's going to be like. That being said, that's it. That's all there is to it. So, who wants to come up and try? Come on up. Let's see what you can do. I'm going to take this and I'm going to flatten it back out again. What I'll do is I'll just flatten the one side for you so you can get an idea of how it's going to work for you. What you're going to do is, once I've got that flattened out, you're going to take this one half, that's going to fold it back out, you're going to match it up to there. So, gloves. See? Safety first, kids. Gloves. Okay. Oh, no, don't be nervous. See, okay, now, first things first. What's your name? Ashley? Okay, don't be nervous, Ashley. You're going to be okay. I'm not going to let you die. But what you are going to do is take the heat gun. Hold it in one hand. You're going to take this, hold it in your other hand. What you're going to do is sort of visually in your head, split it down the middle, because this is the side that you're going to want to heat up. Wrap it around the rolling pin so that you can match what you see here. Okay? Down this way. Just do a sweeping motion up and down. Side to side, up and down. Make sure to cover, what we're trying to do here is you're trying to get, both sides. What you want to do is try and get the heat all over that area so that when you start to see it falling and drooping, then you'll know when it's ready to start shaping. Okay, so now you can shut that off. Wrap it around there. Usually when it starts heating up like that, it takes about 30 seconds before it's finally fully cooled. Yeah, there you go. You got it. And that's all there is to it. So now that you can, like if you don't feel any heat coming from that anymore, now you're going to go back, reheat it, and then shape it again until you got it all matched up. But that's pretty much, let's see. So there you go. It's not as terribly difficult as a lot of people will make it out to be. Thank you, Ashley. That's very good. Awesome. Good job. So yeah, not as hard as a lot of people might make it out to seem. If you see tutorials online and stuff like that, they'll show you how to heat it. They'll show you how to, roughly go about shaping it. But in the end, it's the pattern that matters. When you cut out the pattern and you know it fits, you trace it out, cut it out. After that, everything's pretty much cool. Next slide. Finishing. And because I'm so shameless in self-promotion, some people know that I'm working on a Dr. Doom. Duh, it's right there. When it comes to finishing, it depends again what your design's going to be like. Black middle armor that you see there, that was my fantasy set, that was all engraved. From the get-go, we knew what the design was going to be like. Rachel actually came up with a lot of the travel designs that we put onto that and engraved it. It's that particular piece that I did the engraving first before I did all the shaping, so a little bit more, but not terribly. When it comes to finishing, painting, putting details on, making it look like it should look. If you're doing fantasy armor, depending on what you're designing, you want it to translate as much as it can from what you have on paper to what it is in reality. So when it comes to doing your finishing, that's completely up to you. That's your artistic merit that you're putting into it. To pull off an old stylized armor look, again, it's Sintra, actually layered Sintra, that goes over the base part to give it a raised lip. You sand it down a little bit, give it a little bit of a softer edge. But the rivets, I don't know if everybody can see that, the rivets that go around the top and the bottom are stickers from the dollar store. Yeah, I'm not kidding. The dollar store is
In the craft section,
Yeah.
has little pearl stickers.
little pearl stickers, which were absolutely perfect for what we needed here. So I'm using them on my entire Dr. Doom. The headpiece as well, they just worked out way too nicely. Finishing can also include weathering. If you have armor that needs to look like it's gone through hell and back. Acrylic paints with a sponge, getting into the recesses and the corners and the curves and stuff like that, where you can manage a little bit of control. If you want a little bit of a rust look on there, there's paints at the dollar store, again, which are a buck a piece that go a long way. They have all the metallics and blacks and browns that I primarily use in order to make my stuff look like it's been dragged through mud. Even using a Dremel tool to put nicks, cracks, whatever it is, in order to be able to make the armor or the costume or the armor or whatever it is that you're doing come alive. And that's where a lot of the stuff comes in, whereas you as an artist, and let's face it, everyone who's here obviously is an artist because they want to learn. Your costumes and stuff like that, if you pay attention to the detail, it makes everything pop like you wouldn't believe. When I first originally did my Mandalorian costume, it was clean. It was nice, red and white, Canadian colors. Yeah, go Canada. But when you look at it, it's like, this is actually kind of flat. There's no character to it. And that's the big thing when it comes to doing any type of costuming, is the character that you're trying to pull off, right? So after beating it up and scraping it with a screwdriver, literally coating it in blacks and reds to mix up for muds and stuff like that, tend to look a lot better over time. Certain armors that I do, I want to have a nice pristine kind of look to it. Bill, if you want to stand up and show off your stuff that you've done, if you'd be so kind. His is very clean, but it also has a very rich look to it as well. Last year at Icon, when we wore our fantasy stuff, we were constantly, because we did original designs, that's an original design, but we were constantly mistaken for Game of Thrones. So we just said, yeah, okay, that's cool. We can do that. It's all good. This particular chest plate here, again, is utilizing a lot of layered pieces of Sintra and crushed rivets, which you can buy at Tandy. Usually they're used in leatherwork, but for here, they make the armor look like it's supposed to be armor. It doesn't look like it's plastic anymore. When this whole thing is finally put together, it doesn't. It has the gleam that it should. And paint is also very important. You're not going to want to use, say, just a silver-based acrylic paint for doing armor. You might want to upgrade to, say, something along the lines of an automotive paint that you can get at Paint Tire, which is what a lot of this stuff that I use is now. Automotive paint has some kind of magical mix in it that when it goes on Sintra or plastic, makes it look like it's actually metal. There's so many different shades. They literally have a wall. If anybody's ever been to Canadian Tire and they go to the automotive section, whole wall of paint. Go nuts, experiment with it. Some of the more fancy paints that they have now with metallic coatings, you can get in blue, purple, red, which literally just, it's beautiful to look at. And a lot of the dark metallics and stuff, again, it's all experimentation. And as artists, that's what we do, we experiment. Any questions?
Tell them how to make the breastplate.
Tell them how to make
Yeah,
it?
remember how we figured that out?
Get the mic. How to make the breastplate. Well, again, it all starts with a pattern. This particular breastplate was a pattern that was found on the Armor Archives, which I, again, highly recommend going to get. It was printed out in 4 sections because the PDF was literally split into 4. So if you take it this, split, split, when you print it out, you have to tape all those pieces together to get your final pattern. Trace that pattern onto your Sintra. And then comes the fun of the shaping. Now, again, in doing something like this, where it's a larger piece, you want to do it in sections. Either go by half or by quarter when you're doing your heating. Usually what I will do is take, if you can imagine this is a flat piece, is I will heat up middle, here, and here to get the front to a curve. Now, because the heat is so well dispersed, I can actually put it up against my body and do this to shape it, just to get the curves. Once I have my vertical curve, which is essentially this, my vertical curve, once I have that fitted, and I know where it's going to sit, I will start doing my compound curves, which include going over the shoulder, bringing out the belly a little bit, because, you know, too many burgers. And once that's done, then I can start working on the detail work, which is literally drawing. I don't know if you can see it, it was done in black, but I literally took a Sharpie, just started circling areas where the musculature is going to be. So it kind of helps know a little bit about anatomy when you're doing something like this. You start pushing out your chest, your lats, everything, and then once you have all that said and done, that's when you start doing the refining work. You know, you're going back, you're fitting it, you're making sure that it's going to go where it needs to go type thing. Breastplates like this, because I've been doing it so often, a breastplate like this will still take me about 4 to 6 hours to do in a single set. The more you practice, the more you get used to it, the less time it's going to take. But usually, when it comes to doing armor, it's the front and the back of the torso that takes me the longest, because you want it to fit to the way so that you can actually move your arms around, you can actually cross your arms. You know, most of the armors that I've done before in the past, if I wanted to cross my arms, it was like, can't do it. So it's a lot of refining.
But you can sit too.
What's that? And sitting, yes, I can sit in this, which is going to be excellent. This is the first time. But yeah, a lot of it comes from the pattern. If you know that the pattern's going to fit, the translation from there to the Sintra to the body, it should be good to go. There is one final note I'll leave you with, and that is two final notes that I'll leave you with. One being, when it comes to doing costuming of any sort, if you're sewing, working with Sintra, working with plastic, painting, whatever, don't get frustrated. This is not worth blowing your brains out over later. Not that anybody's ever done that. But I know the frustration that comes from when you're working on a piece and it's like, this is going to look awesome, and then something goes to screw it up and you literally want to take it and just chuck it. Don't. You can fix it. It's not hard to do. Case in point, the Dr. Doom helmet that I was working on last year about this time, the shapes, nothing was working with it. No matter what I could do with it, I wanted to pinch it. And now I'm glad that I did not do that, that I took the time, took a couple of steps back, breathed, went back to it, worked out so much better than I could have possibly imagined. But that's the same with any artwork. If you're drawing, if you're painting, whatever. Something's going to happen. You may screw it up. You may not screw it up. Always stick to your plan. Always stick to your path. And don't ever give up. Keep calm and cautious. Now we have one more thing. Last night and the night before. Didn't have your album always. Anyways, because I know I'm running out of time.
Banana.
I have. Everybody got a ticket, right? Everybody that came in got a ticket? Right? Yes? Good? Good. Because using this pattern and doing some finishing last night, I made up a couple of quick cuffs.
Sorry guys, they're a little feminine.
However, they can be altered. You can do whatever the heck you want with them. I don't care. It So let's see who's going to be receiving a couple of specially made cups for Winterfest. Oh, read that out.
774062.
Now, those probably won't fit around your hands, but if you have a Dremel tool or whatever, they're sealed on the inside with Winterfest. All you have to do is just take a cut and right down the center. You can spread them out a little bit, do whatever you need to do with them.
Don't be afraid to add some foam padding.
If you have, even better, there you go. All
Don't be
right.
afraid to add foam padding.
Does anybody have any questions? Anything along those lines?
Anybody want to come up and see?
Yes, come on up, check out some of this stuff that you can.
Say you got it again, you said Artisan
Artist Emporium, exactly, down on St. James.
It also plays heavy questions for father, right?
Oh, that's right, yeah. If anybody's going to Sabic Polymer Shapers, they do have a minimum order. It's like $100, but if you've got a couple of people going in on it, you buy a couple of sheets, you're good. And they only take cash. They don't take cash.
Yeah, they charge for credit card.
Really? Come on up, take a look at some stuff. I think we got a couple of minutes yet. I see you.